the relationship between ribosomes and aging. I think you mentioned that earlier in your career you were just studying ribosomes to better understand them.
I think it happened organically as the longevity field expanded, and this phenomenon of proteostasis, which is preserving the correct expression of proteins in the cell and maintenance of the orchestra of proteins in the cell being connected with aging. The evidence built up over years. And so you would just sort of watch this happen. It's not that there was a particular moment when you suddenly realized, there's a famous quote from Moliere where there's a character who suddenly discovers he's been speaking in prose all his life. So there's no magic moment like that where I say, oh, I'm actually working on something related to aging. It just happened over time.
Okay. I want to come back to ribosomes and better understand DNA damage and how all of this protein synthesis and getting rid of proteins relates to aging. Before we get there, you mentioned that there are some dubious claims or a little bit of overhype in the longevity field. Are there any claims or therapeutics that stand out, that sort of raise your eyebrows most, that frustrate you?
Well, there are some claims in the science field that I've gone into where a discovery is made, then a contrary discovery is made, and the consensus then develops against the original discovery. But the original discoverers, of course, they're not backing down, and they still believe in what they believe. And rather than tell you now, I would say this is stuff that I've discussed in detail in the book. But this is a case where I think people are applying standards of evidence that they wouldn't apply to other people. So they've got a hypothesis. When it's I wouldn't say disproved, but when a lot of evidence builds against it, they still stick to it, and they still want to commercialize these things. So I think that's not quite beyond the pale, but I think people should be somewhat skeptical of claims where the scientist has a lot at stake in it. It doesn't mean that scientists developing their ideas and commercializing it is bad. That's how medicine develops. Okay, so it's not universally the case that you should dismiss anything just because a person has a company. That's how biotech develops. But it does mean that you need to take a hard look. And by hard look, I mean, how do government agencies, how do the international health community, how do they view it? And do they recommend it? Does anyone beyond the seller or beyond the original proponents support it? And if you look at medicines that are universally accepted, like statins or high blood pressure medicines, it's not just the original proponents who accept it. It's accepted by the wide community of medical practitioners. That is different in the aging field, and where it's often just the original proponents who keep pushing these things. Now, the thing that I find really frustrating are the more extreme views, and I'm afraid in California they're very popular, and that are these things like cryonics, where you freeze bodies or even brains and assume that science is going to progress at some point and then resurrect these people. I think there's no basis for that.